BBRC for kids.
The Israelites had been traveling through the hot, dry desert for many weeks. God had done amazing miracles for them.
He sent bread from heaven called manna to feed them. He brought water from the rock to quench their taste. And he was leading them with a cloud by day and fire by night.
But now, they faced a new danger.
A fierce and powerful army called the Amalek was coming to attack them.
The Amalekites were strong warriors who lived in the desert. They don't want the Israelites passing through their land, so they decided to fight them.
The Israelites were not trained soldiers. They had been slaves in Egypt for years. They had no experience in battle. Now they were about to face an enemy that was ready for war.
Moses, the great leader of Israel, called a brave young man named Joshua and said to him,
"Joshua, choose some strong men and prepare for battle. Tomorrow, you will lead them to fight against the Amalekites.
I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." Joshua nodded bravely. He trusted Moses and, most of all, he trusted God.
That night, Joshua gathered the best fighters from Israelites. They sharpened their swords, prepared their shield, and got ready for battle.
Even though they had never fought in any war before, they believed that God would help them.
The next morning, as the sun rose over the desert, the Amalekite army stormed toward the Israelites' camp.
Their warriors were fierce, their swords gleamed in the sunlight, and their horses thundered across the sand.
But Joshua and his men stood ready. They gripped their weapons and charged forward. The battle began.
Up on the hillside, Moses climbed to the top with his brother Aaron and his friend, Hur. He held the staff of God, the same staff that had parted the Red Sea and brought water from the rock.
He knew that the battle would not be won with swords alone. It would be won by God's power.
Moses lifted the staff high above his head and stretched out his arms toward heaven.
Something incredible happened.
What was it?
As long as Moses kept his hands raised, Joshua and the Israelites started winning the battle. They pushed the Amalekites back, fighting bravely and gaining ground.
But Moses' arms began to grow tired. They felt heavy, and his muscles ached. Slowly, his arms dropped.
As soon as Moses' arms fell, the Amalekites started winning. They pushed back against Joshua's men, forcing them to retreat.
Moses quickly lifted his arms again, and the Israelites took the lead once more.
Aaron and Hur watched closely. They saw that as long as Moses kept his arms raised, the Israelites were winning.
But Moses was getting weaker and weaker. His arms were shaking, and he couldn't hold them up any longer.
Aaron turned to Hur. "We need to help Moses," he said. They took a large stone and rolled it behind Moses. "Sit here, Moses," Aaron said.
Moses sat down, feeling relief. But his arms still needed to stay up.
So Aaron and Hur stood on either side of him. They held up his arms, one on the left and one on the right.
With their help, Moses kept his hands raised toward heaven until sunset. And because of that, Joshua and the Israelites kept winning.
The Amalekites are defeated. As the sun began to set, the battle was over. Joshua and his army defeated the Amalekites.
The Israelites cheered and shouted with joy. They had won the battle, but they knew it wasn't just because of their swords or their strength. It was because God had given them the victory.
Moses looked out over the battlefield and smiled. God had saved them once again.
Then, God spoke to Moses and said, "Write this down as a reminder. I will completely destroy the Amalekites one day, and their name will be erased from history."
Moses built an altar to worship God and named it "The Lord is my banner." He declared,
"Yes, you can trust God's word." Exodus 14:14 The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.